Today is buyer consultations. Man, is it hard to deal with buyers right now? Got a couple people coming in. So, for those of you that are taking notes, and for those of you that have questions, please just I don't care. You can say it whenever you want. Raise your hand, throw it in the chat. Any question that you have, I promise you, other people are having the same thing. Um, Part of our team when we do our coaching, this is the details that we look at. We really try to fine tune what's going on with the buyers. And what I've learned is, unfortunately, a lot of the challenges fall onto the buyer agent's lap, and it's because they did not set the expectations for what the buyer has going on. So that is the first note that I had in diving into this, because I only have 40 minutes. I like to do these short and quick and get the information out as best as possible, and leave some time for Q&A. So the biggest thing is the buyer expectations when you do your buyer consultation. So when you're doing a buyer consultation, especially if it's a family or a friend, we get all excited. We're like, oh my gosh, it's a buyer, especially if you're new to the business. I mean, right now, if you've been in the business for quite some time, when you deal with buyers, how many of you, by either thumbs up or thumbs down, actually are not very excited to take buyers out? I gotta believe it is a challenge right now to take buyers out. Um, Main reasons: one is you're dealing with multiple offers, you're dealing with probably no inventory, which is more than likely the biggest case, and your clients keep bitching, saying, hey, where are the homes? What else are you going to show me? And all you say is, well, there are no other homes. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about circle prospecting. We're going to talk about how to get off market lists, and I'm making notes to make sure that I leave time to tell you how to do that in MLS and our formula, so it makes you look like you're continuously trying to find things that a lot of times people, it's hard to find when it comes time for home. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the buyer consultation. First and foremost, the buyer consultation, you really want to try to have it at the house, at their house. Why is that? Is because guess what? Do you think they probably need to sell that house? So now you're killing two birds with one stone. So if they say to you, hey, I'm thinking about buying, just not too sure. I've been looking online. I started on Zillow, did realtor.com, wherever it is. You want to be able to say, sure, not a problem at all. The first question is, where is it that, do you need to sell a house in order to purchase? All right, especially if you're dealing with cold calls with Zillow. The first question, if you're getting those cold calls, hey, love to show you the property, but do you need to sell a house in order to make this purchase? And then that's when you can go and you can look at to say, okay, well, let me meet at your house. It's a great way. It's a great in to be able to get in there. All right. Second thing is when you're dealing with it is, where have you been looking? Where have you been looking for homes? Okay. We all know that they're probably going to say online. Okay. Then you got to dive deeper. Remember, dive deep, not wide. Okay, great. Where exactly have you been looking? Oh, just online. Oh, great. Where online? Force them to tell you Zillow, realtor.com. Okay, great. Now, one of the things I do tell you is, how many times have you been probably looking on some of these websites and you find out that that house is either under contract, the information's not accurate, you're struggling trying to find it. It's probably more frustrating and bothering you more than anything else. More than likely, they will say yes. So what you're doing is you're setting the bar on why it's valuable for you to talk to me and why my information is going to be very accurate. So then I would say, okay, that's great. You're probably seeing a lot of things that might not be accurate. They're under contract, not under contract. You don't really know. You're trying to call them. There's a lot of information out there. It's very overwhelming. Yeah, Brock, exactly. Well, the thing is what you got to focus on is saying, hey, I just want you to know that the information I send to you, I get fined if it's not correct. So it has to be 100% accurate. So would you be interested in seeing the searches that I can send you, so that way you know that it's 100% accurate? It has to be updated instantaneously, because we get in trouble because we're held to a higher level. Would you like that instead? They're going to tell you yes at that point, because they want that information. Well, why? Why wouldn't I want that? Yeah, that sounds great, Brock. So then what we do is We get their information and we send it over to them. All right. Then what we're doing for the buyer consultation is, hey, I need to get some information on some of your home search and what that criteria is. Okay. This is a good way to build a rapport with them and start to get it, because guess what they do? It's a very good way to build rapport, and it's a good way to be able to start to understand their needs and their wants. Okay. There's going to be a word I want you to write down. It's called non-negotiable. And in that, that's what you want to ask people is like, what's non-negotiable for you to purchase a home? Like, what is it that you must have? And that's going to be a key question that you're going to ask down the road. But you do that at the buyer consultation. You don't do it up front when you're on the phone. Just get them like, hey, let me get your information. Let me send you over my stuff. Let me send you over a quick home search, because they just want to see homes. They're just excited. They want to see it. And you want to set the bar and you want to set the standards of what's going on with the inventory, because you're going to set the table, because they're going to say to you at some point, or when you start showing them homes or showing them the MLS, there's not going to be a lot of homes, right? They already know that there isn't a lot of homes. They're now going to see that there's not a lot of homes. Okay. And then when you go to the buyer consultation, I'm going to give you the answers of how you're going to add more value, why they need to hire you as an agent, because there are no homes out there. So that's usually what you're doing right in the beginning, depending if it's a cold person or somebody you know. I don't change the script. Actually, the people you know, you got to work twice as hard for, because they feel obligated they have to use you, not because they want to use you. Well, I got to use Brock because he's my nephew. All right. I'd rather go with this top agent over here because they're really good and my neighbor used them, but I have to use him because he's my nephew. You don't want to be put in that position. A lot of times agents, what they do is, because they either know them or their family, you guys just set, not, I shouldn't say you guys, agents set it, drop it down a level and not work as hard. Well, I got him. Of course the guy used me. It's my uncle. All right. You want to make sure that you're doing something, or you're providing extra value, because you want them to double advertise for you. Well, it's my nephew, but he's really good. Here's what he's done. They're going to talk more about you. So when it comes time for family and friends, I actually work twice as hard, because I want to make sure that they're getting everything I can plus some, because I feel like they're just obligated to use me. So when you're doing the buyer consultation, is you're getting a read, you're getting all the little bits of information, and you're setting an appointment. A lot of times people don't set appointments for buyer consultations because they think it's all done online, and it's not. Now, in this day and age, because of COVID, I strongly recommend you using the Zoom if you need to do a Zoom. If they're renting, if they're at work, whatever it might be, Zoom is a really good way for you to be able to showcase yourself of, not Zoom, sorry, I was looking at the other screen next to me. The Zoom is a good way to not have to travel as far, especially if they don't have a house to sell, and you'll be able to ask the questions that you need to ask for your buyer consultation. So buyer consultation, couple things you need to make sure that you have on the buyer consultation is, you want to make sure that they're ready for whatever lending options they have. Have they talked to a lender? And if they haven't talked to a lender, you need to be prepared to bring at least two people of names to you. All right. Here are two lenders that I would recommend. If you don't have two, you can reach out to me. I can tell you two that I work with that I strongly recommend. I even have 3 or 4 of them. We do have a lot of lenders that we work with, but I have my go-tos. All right. If you don't have go-tos, ask people in your office, talk to other top agents. Like I said, you can feel free to put in the chat to us on people that you want, but having lenders obviously is very important. All right. What's their financial criteria looking like? So that way you have that and know that going into it. All right. Next is testimonials. Make sure you have some testimonials. If you've been in the business and you've won deals, if you won offers, if you showed only like less than 4 properties and you were able to get the transaction done. All right. A good story from your previous client is something very, very important, because you want to make sure that they understand their success behind you and why they need to choose you to be an agent, or choose you to be their buyer agent, because of what you've done for other people. Because all they've been hearing is, losing deals, no inventory, haven't found a house. Okay. Turn that around and provide information of what you've done in your experience. So testimonials are very, very important that you bring to your buyer consultation. Okay. We're not going to go into the whole listing side. We're just going to focus on it because I said to you, listen, if you go to their house, you are going to do, a possible listing presentation at the same time. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to focus on the buyer side. So you got the buyer side in play, and you get to the house, and the other paperwork, sorry, buyer agency agreement. Okay. You got working with real estate agreement form. Make sure you have that. Make sure you have your resume on anything about yourself. Make sure you have information about your testimonials on what that looks like for your testimonials. Make sure you have that information. What's the other thing that we got? I'm trying to think of our key ingredients. And then you're going to have a needs analysis. A needs analysis is what the buyer's needs are. What does that look like? And in reference to the needs analysis for the buyer, you want to make sure that you have something there that explains to them what it is that they're looking for. Bedrooms, bathrooms. You guys know the normal stuff. What is their price point? What are they trying to do? What time period do they need to move in? Do they need to move in instantaneously? Do they have time to work? How long have they been working with? How long have they been looking for a home? Okay, we talked about their sources. What sources are they doing? Zillow, Realtor.com. Are they working with any real estate agents? Okay, you're kind of doing what we do in a listing pre-qual on the phone. You're doing the consultation right then and there, either on the Zoom or at their house. So it's very, very key ingredients because you're going to get this information from them. The next thing, and I talked about it earlier, and that's called the non-negotiables. Okay, what is the non-negotiable that the buyer has to have? Like, what does that look like? Do they need to have a fence? Is it need to be in a cul-de-sac? What school zones does it need to be in? All those things are so very important to make sure that the non-negotiables are going to be met. Okay. Now remember, I haven't even touched base yet on what offers are looking like yet. I haven't even touched base on my strategies. I'm just collecting information from them so I can start to prepare a portfolio on my client so I can start to manage them in a better way so I can set their expectations of what's out there. Okay. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Stop me. You can ask away on anything that we have so far. All right. Everybody good? Thumbs up. Everybody good? I'm trying to look at everybody at the same time. Okay. So no questions. I'll move on. So when you're doing this, the buyer consultation, and you're collecting this data, you're all writing it down. I say it all the time when it comes time for listing presentations. It's the same thing on the buyer side. Write it down. Write it down. Just don't nod your head and smile. What happens is the client thinks that you're not doing what you should be. Like, how can they get all this information? How can they remember this? They're asking me what I want, my bedrooms, my baths. They want to know my price. They want to know everything about my family. And here they are going, no, that sounds good. I don't care what you write down. Just write down something. It could be your grocery list, for crying out loud, but write down something. If you're writing something down, but you got to do something. So it makes them feel that you're actually collecting the data. Now you can go online and find buyer consultation lists and do all that stuff. If you go to your lender, you can ask your lender, do you have a buyer consultation? Do you have questions that you have? I know Movement Mortgage does a lot of stuff with training for the real estate agents. We use them, and we use Summit and Fairway. And so you can use some of their information they ask when it comes time. Now notice I still haven't even asked them about the financing except who they use and do they have somebody. That's it. I haven't got anything else. I'm still asking what their needs are, their needs analysis. I'm probing more information out there. I'm asking their time period and when they want to move, what's important to them on that next move, all these things that they need to have in order for you to make your portfolio for them. And they like it. It's like when you go to the doctor, you like when the nurse asks you questions. I mean, you're about to have brain surgery, we'll just say. You want to make sure they're asking all the right questions. Are you allergic to anything? Do you have any reactions to anything? Who's picking you up? You know, have you done this before? Have you had certain, like all these things are very important. See, as agents, for whatever reason, we just start going in MLS, we type it in and we're like, here you go, look at these. You didn't do an accurate analysis consultation with them to help provide value with them. Because guess what? At some point, you might have to ask them for more commission. You might have to ask them to pay for your commission. Why? It's because in MLS right now, we're seeing commissions 2.5%, 2%. I've seen them some low at below 2. If you think that's going to change, forget about it. It's not going to change anytime soon until the market readjusts itself. So you got to start adding value. So when it comes time for it and you have to have a conversation, you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm having 2%. Are you willing to make up the difference? This is a consultation where you have this conversation in. I actually put it in my buyer agency agreement that I have the option to ask you for the additional money. It's not mandatory. I have the option. So if I see 2.5, and depending on the purchase price, I might not ask for it. I also say to them at the time period when we're doing the commission, I might say, hey, if I only have to show you less than 5 homes, then of course I'm not going to ask you for it. The reason why I put it in there is because sometimes I'm showing you 15, 20, 30 homes, and I have to have a clause to compensate for my time that's in there. What do you think that does to them when they're looking at homes? They're probably saying to themselves, honey, listen, we've already looked at like more than 10 or 12 homes. Like we can't keep sending him out there. We have to do a better job of combing through the what he's giving us, because if not, he's going to ask us to pay. That could happen, right? And it sets you up so when they do, or now they're not just throwing out anything out at you and you're driving all around and they can drive by the house and they say, yeah, I don't like it. And you're like, what the hell? I just drove 30 minutes all the way out here. And they could have done that on their own. So it influences them to start doing things on their own. So you're not having to put as much effort in, because guess what? You're not getting paid as much. And I don't know about you, but I like to get paid more. Okay. So in my conversation, we are having that. We'll go back to the buyer agency here shortly, but that is a key ingredient. The commissions, having that conversation, setting the expectations that I might have to come to you and ask for you for my commission. So all these things are very important when it comes time for reaching out and trying to get, having this buyer consultation. That's part of the conversation, is dealing with the commissions. So, let's see. So we talked about the buyer consultation in reference to what we're getting for the needs analysis and the data and all the things that we're getting from them. At this point here, when we got basically our normal Q&A, all the things they're looking for, is I'm going to have to shift gears to the financial piece of what does that look like? How much money do you have? All right. How many of you giving me a thumbs up would be know that FHA is very challenging right now? FHA, when they say FHA, I have a loan, I can only put 3%, 4% down, you're going to struggle. Okay. You're going to have some challenges. Do we all understand that? The FHA is one of the hardest ones that we have out there. And that's because they have the least amount of money to put down. When we're talking to buyers, setting the expectation of now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of due diligence and what that looks like to win a deal. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because FHA, VA right now are a little challenging. VA loans, though, just to write down this note, why VA loans are good is because the appraisal has to be done in less than 10 days. I actually believe it's 7 days, but the VA loans, they have less than 10 days to get an appraisal done. How many of us struggle right now that when we're trying to do due diligence and we're trying to figure out the date our date, we don't know what to put out, or we're putting it out further along because we don't know when the appraisal is going to come through, because most appraisals are taking 3 weeks. So in the case of the appraisal, you want to make sure that you are doing everything in your power to shorten the time period of the due diligence, because that adds strength to you for your offer. But you can't do that if you have a long due diligence. So VA could be important at that time. VA could help you out in reference to having the short due diligence period. Because if you add a home inspection waiver, well, all we're dealing with now is the appraisal. And now my due diligence period could be only 14 days. So just some things to think about when you're presenting these extra addendums and looking at a time period, that we know the secret formula to winning. Here's the formula to winning. And we're about to share this with the buyer now. The secret formula to winning, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is you increase the due diligence money, decrease the time of due diligence, increases your strength of your offer. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You increase your due diligence dollar amount and decrease your due diligence time period, equals a stronger offer. Okay. When we are doing our offers right now, we set the expectation. We did this event up Monday, and the people in Caldwell, they were awesome up there. We have a different market. I get it, but I know that eventually it's going to catch up there. But literally most of my due diligences, I talk to my clients and say, I need $15,000 to $25,000. Okay. And then we got to try to find out where the money is going to come from. But you got to set the expectation up front. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I just want you to know, going into this, I'm going to need a lot of due diligence. The formula is this: when I increase my due diligence amount and decrease my due diligence time period, I'm going to have a really strong offer. Here's some of my strategies that I'm going to do doing this. And one is, we got to make sure that we have addendums that match what we're looking for, as well as the dollar amount needs to be on the table to show that the seller is, hey, we're real serious over here. My buyers are very, very serious. And so you're going to have to make sure that you present a very, very solid offer. Now, some of the things that we talked about on Monday were double due diligence. That is literally written in the earnest money. I was just having lunch with my uncle, and him and I were brainstorming yesterday how to even make that even stronger. So we have an earnest money addendum. Basically, the earnest money addendum states that the earnest money that you had, so the second line of your offer to purchase, if everybody closes their eyes and just imagine the offer to purchase, you have the first line is your purchase price, the second line is your due diligence amount, the third line is earnest money, and the fourth line is additional earnest money. We are starting to use the earnest money lines at a very, very different level. We are adding in the 5 days. They will receive the earnest money in 5 days. So it buys my client more time if they need to have the money gifted, if they need to take out from their 401k. We're coming up with different ways for our clients to get more money so we can showcase a higher due diligence amount, because we know that is the formula to win. We are also going to the additional earnest money, and we're adding money at the additional earnest money, and we are taking the date and we're changing, and we're throwing that date out further along, so that way they even have more time to find more money. And or if they close on their house, and then what they're doing after they close on their house, they're doing a lease back. Now they have the equity inside their home, and we can now make that date the same date that they close on their house or the day after, and we add that to the earnest money as well. And some of it's refundable, some of it's not refundable, but that's how we're creating more money without them having to really, when they don't have any more money. So we're using different ways to be able to showcase to the seller, and that's what's helping us win. But these are the conversations you're having at your at the table when you're dealing with the buyer consultation, going through some of these strategies, telling them about the due diligence money, telling them about additional earnest money, telling them how they're doing a possibly double due diligence, telling them where the dollar amount needs to go to, telling them about the earnest money of how it could be non-refundable. All right. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. And I still have more. Does anybody have any questions? I like to do a little stop here. Does anybody got anything they want to add or say? Like, it is a little bit on the higher level of where things are and complicated because you're now trying to sell the house, do a seller possession after close. You're trying to change dates around. So it's one of the things Greg has. One of the things I'm starting to see is sellers looking for delayed closing gets them in. Yes. The possession after close, possession before close, like all these things are now coming more into play. Just make sure people understand that after 14 days, you've got to go to a rental contract. Just they're going more and more strict on it. And that's just because of people are using it more. So when you use it more, they're looking out and they're finding the details that come into play. So just look at that. Let's revisit the commission real quick. We all know the commission is dropping lower and lower. So when you're providing value, they're going to be more engaged to be like, hey, I might have to come to you to pay this extra percentage. It all depends on how much work you got going into. It depends on how much value. So make sure you might even need to write it in your contract. If you want to see what ours is written in the contract, put your email in the chat box here, and I'll share with you the language that we put in our buyer agency agreements. So that way we're not getting screwed out of our commission. See, guys, if you present it up front, it's much easier to say it than if you wait till you get to the MLS, you show the home, and then you look at the commission, and now you're like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, listen, this commission is only 2%. I'm going to ask from the seller first, and guess what the seller's going to pretty much tell you? To go fly a kite. Then you're going to have to ask the buyer. But that time, it's a little too hard because the buyer's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I've never heard of this. Nobody else is doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's much harder of a conversation. So it's good to have it up front, like, hey, this is what we might do. This is the commission that's going on. And I might, I have the option whether or not to ask you for the other percentage. I really hope the seller's going to do it, but I don't know. Just want to give you a heads up of what that looks like. I literally just did one, and the client brought it to my attention. Like, we're walking into the house. She goes, Brock, I noticed this one's at 2%. And my husband and I already talked about the 0.5%. It's $1 million home. And they've already had the conversation about the 0.5%. And they already told me that they're going to pay for it. Why? Is because I set the expectation up front, and I don't even have to say it. And they're telling me that they're going to pay me. This stuff's important, guys. Why is it easier? It's because you did the hard work in the front. That's what makes the job easier in the back end. And you don't have to have fights and dealing with awkward positions or awkward situations. All right. So we talk about our strategies. We talk about what's going on in the market. We talk about what we're seeing. We talk about the commission. We talk about all this stuff. Now, the next thing that we have to talk about is we need to talk about actually of the market and the lack of inventory, right? We got to start having that conversation of, so, all right, hopefully everybody can hear. Okay, good. You got to have the conversation. There's no inventory. Brock, I've been looking all over the place. I've been on Zillow. I've been on Realtor.com. I've gone to Craigslist. I've done everything. There's not any homes out there. Okay, no, I completely understand. From the list I gave you already, anything strike you? No, nothing did. We've looked at these homes already. We've already seen them. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is one of the things that separates us from the other buyer agents out there is we have an off-market list. Would you be interested in our off-market list? And of course, what are they going to say? Yes, I want the off-market list. All right, not a problem at all. We'll get you the off-market list. Now, what takes place is agents are like, well, Brock, what the hell is the off-market list? Because what am I going to do now? Okay, It's called expireds. All right. You can go into your MLS. I don't have mine up front. If I was more prepared, I would show it to you how to do it on MLS, but hopefully you all have been in MLS to be able to know. Go in your matrix, go down, put in the normal criteria. Everything that they have already told you that they wanted, it's not a problem at all. You got their information. You fill it out normally. The only difference is you're going on the left side of the boxes and you're going to go in uncheck coming soon, uncheck active, uncheck under contract. I don't even know why we would show them anyways, but you uncheck those under contract, no show and show. You're going to click on expired, withdrawn, and I can't remember what the other one is offhand, but you're going to check all three boxes. And then here's the key ingredient. You're going to start to put in there 0 to 365. All right. You might have to go 0. Well, you will have to. You might go 0 to 500. You do that for all of them. And you're going to find, and you're going to have homes that pop up. Now, here's the key thing that you got to write down. This is very, very important. Is the market going up? Yes or no? Anybody want to answer that one? Because it's a pretty simple question. Is the market going up? Or are we having inflated prices?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Shayla. So the market is going up. So if you put in expired listings from last year to 2 years ago on the same exact price that they're looking for, if we were to sell those homes, would they not be higher right now? So you can't put in that exact dollar amount, because that dollar amount, if you got that listing because it's off the market and you call them up and you say, hey, I have a buyer for your property, would you be looking to sell? And you've been looking between 300 and 325. If you did a residential property report, an RPR, I guarantee it's going to say like 375, 400, 1,000 now in today's market. And that's going to be over their price point. So what you got to do is you got to go 10 to 20% below what their price is, because those homes, you're going to make them happy because, hey, a conversation is just like this when we circle prospect. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I know you were trying to sell your house 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm not too sure if you thought about selling your house again, but I do know now we can increase your price 20 to 30%. And I actually have a buyer who's very interested in selling and buying your house. Do you have like 30 minutes that we can have a conversation just to see if this is something you're interested in? Okay. Getting out of role play. We already know that they wanted to sell at some point. Something could have taken place. Something could have happened. And now this could be a really good opportunity. We're like, well, fun. I mean, this is what they all say in circle. Well, we've been looking and we've been seeing things and we just didn't know. Like, wow, really? I can get that much for my house? When we were selling it before, we were only getting 275, and now you're saying I can get 325 for my house? Yes, ma'am. As well as I do have a buyer who's very interested in your property. Okay, that's strong. That's confidence coming into that conversation when you're presenting it to that potential seller. And now you're doing a dual agency on it. You get a sell and a buy. That's how we get a lot of our deals right now, is doing that double-sided by our circle prospecting. So you guys set the price low. Now, what I do is I then take that exact list, because now I've found homes and they're off market and they can't find them anywhere because they're expired and withdrawn. There's no public site that they can go to for expired and withdrawn. Zillow only does what is active, and they don't know addresses unless they do some sort of formal thing. Zillow doesn't have it, so they can't find it. So what takes place is you're going to send this over to your client. Client's going to be like, oh, let me take a look. They might say, wow, yeah, there is one of these homes. They might say there is not any of these homes. I don't really know. Okay. But they're going to say one or the other. Didn't find anything, or I found something. So here's the thing. You have to wait 7 to 10 days, because we know in our mindset, we know a habit. We know if we do something for 7 or 10 days, things start to gradually form into something in a routine. We also know people start to get frustrated that they haven't found anything. You all have heard me say, for a listing, the days on the market that a house is listed and is not sold, every day the seller starts to think you might not have been the right choice. That's how expires happen. That's how firing happens. It's like, damn, you didn't sell my house. I don't think you can sell my house. We've been sitting here for 3 months. Oh my gosh, did I pick the right agent? I knew I should have went with this agent. So it's the same thing for buyer side, guys. So every day you don't find them homes and you keep saying, there isn't any, there isn't any, there's lack of inventory, there isn't any. Okay. There's somebody like myself, somebody like on our team, there's somebody else who's out there who has the right language, and they're going to start to second guess. Oh, maybe we did hire the wrong buyer agent. We need a more of an aggressive person who's going to go out there. So this is adding value to yourself. So you're going to give them your list. Hey, here's some homes that I have for you. They don't know how long ago it is, but this is the last year. Maybe you did the last 2 years. Now, what happens then when you get to that 7 or 10 days and they say they don't find anything, then you're going to say, okay, let me go back to the grind. Let me see what I can do for you. And all you do is you go back to the same parameter, the same price point. Instead of putting in 0 to 365 or 0 to 500, you now go in there under expire withdrawn and temporary withdrawn is you put 501 to 830. You're just going to keep falling further back in years. We go 10 years back. Okay. That's 3,600 and whatever days. We start doing that. So then we do 1,001 to 1,500. Then we do 1,501 to 2,000. Then we do 2,001 to 2,500. We go all the way back and we do it every 7 to 10 days. Do you see? I can get almost 6 weeks to 2 months of them getting off market lists, and they feel we're working for them. So they don't think at all of firing me because I'm not giving them more information. If anything, they're going to start to feel bad and be like, damn, we got to find something. I mean, hell, we looked at all these homes. Honey, we might not be able to get the perfect home. This might be the best thing, and we can build a fence in later. We can build in a screened-in porch. They'll start to renegotiate in their head their non-negotiables, and then now they're going to work for you on your behalf instead of the other way around. See, real estate agents come from a scarcity standpoint instead of an abundance standpoint. They would come with abundance if they just knew what they were going to give them. But if you just take these tasks and do it, you have a better chance of giving them more abundance, and then they're not going to want to fire you, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, here's some homes. And guess what? At the same time, you possibly can get a listing. Hello? This is how you make extra money. Okay? So when you're doing these steps and you're explaining to them how I'm going to give them, we call our secret sauce list, our off-market homes. I'm going to give you our off-market homes, okay? They're there. Not a lot of people can get them. A lot of people don't even know how to get them. Would you be interested in getting them? Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, I would, Brock. That would be phenomenal. Wow. Honey, did you hear that? We haven't been able to find anything, and he's got a list just sitting here waiting for us to be able to go. Okay? This is what builds value. This is what keeps you in the game in this type of market and keeps you trying to find homes, possibly get listings, is setting these expectations so that way the buyer feels confident going into a game plan. If you can't hear it in my voice right now, and I don't know how it works in Zoom to some extent, but you have to be able to get this in, or you have to be able to bring this energy to the table, just like it is for listings. Energy and value and portraying it to them is so vital and so important, because nobody wants to be on a losing team. If you go in with the mindset buyer agents, and you say, well, yeah, I'll show you this property. It's in a price point that probably is going to have 30 showings and probably going against 12 offers. And I mean, we'll go. Yeah, no, it's not a problem. We can go. I mean, I don't think we'll get it, but yeah, let's go take a look. I mean, how many buyers want to work with a buyer agent like that? Like, you got to be able to set the expectations, carry it through, and have a solid game plan. If you have a solid game plan, you, even as a buyer's agents, are going to feel confident going into it, because nobody wants to keep showing property. Nobody wants to keep going, driving around, opening up doors and doing all that stuff and showing you property. So, Victoria, thank you. You have a question. Before showing buyer options on off-market homes, you have the initial, are you willing to sell conversation with the potential seller? make sure I read that right. Before showing buyer options on off-market homes, you have the initial, are you willing to sell conversation with potential. So Victoria, if you're on, if you can explain to me, are you referring to the buyer that I'm having the buyer consultation with? Like they eventually, like you're asking that, you're talking about their house, selling their house?
Yeah. So basically, you're saying once they agree to see off market homes or that they're interested in, and you start sending them some options, do you have that prior conversation with the potential seller before you send them? You know what I'm saying? In
Oh,
other
the
words, what if they
potential
pick out a
seller.
home
Yes,
that
yes,
they
yes,
like
yes.
and then you haven't even had the
Yes.
complete conversation with the seller to sell yet?
Yes, very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. I do tell them, like, listen, every off market home that I send to you, I'm not 100% sure they're ready to, if they're going to sell, they're not going to sell. But all I can give you is more opportunities that other buyers don't have there. And are you okay with that? Because if not, then I don't want to send you on an emotional roller coaster. But I do know at one point these people wanted to sell and they could have sold their house. I don't know, but at least we have an opportunity to be able to see it. And majority of the time when you say it like that, they're like, well, it's got to be better than what we're doing now because right now we don't have anything. But yes, so to even add more to that, and I'm going to run a little bit later than 1 o'clock. I do apologize, but if you got to go, I completely understand. So we have a program that does GeoPortal through Arch Agent and Vulcan 7, and so we're able to get the contacts information. We get their house, we get their emails, we get their phone numbers, and we are able to call them and get their information. If you don't have that, then I would suggest either just going to their house, door knocking. I know that sounds crazy, the door knocking world, but you either can door knock them or you can leave them a letter and you can share what you want in that letter for it. Does that answer your question, Victoria?
Yes. So pretty much, unless the buyer starts expressing a sincere interest in that property, you wouldn't approach the seller or homeowner.
Correct.
Right.
Now you can if you want to be aggressive in the listing side, and that's part of our thing. And when we do our phone calls, it's like, hey, I know somebody, I'm just Heritage Green. I know people want to move in Heritage Green. It's a good way to door knock. It's a good way during our income producing time to like call around and actually make phone calls. And agents feel actually more confident making a phone call when they actually have a buyer that wants to buy a house than literally just making cold calls, because that's really what it is. So for whatever reason, not whatever reason, its mindset is they feel confident and they feel like they have a buyer. So when they're talking on the phone, like, I really have a buyer, and they really do. So they feel better making those conversations. A very good question. All right. It is a little bit after 1 o'clock, and I like to do 45 minutes on my coaching. Please, anybody got any more questions at all about this? This is very important, guys. If you set the value and set the expectations to this buyer, you have a better chance of them working with you. They'll even negotiate certain things with you. Like I told you earlier, they might even say, like, you know what, we might not need all this. I also set the stage with them and tell them, like, hey, you're not going to find 100% of everything you need right now. This market is very challenging. There's low inventory, but if I can get you 90%, are you willing to work with me on that? And they will say yes to you. They'll be like, okay, yes, we understand. We know the market is very tough. So now you're able, when they're looking at the home and they might be like, well, it doesn't have this, you can then easily say, hey, remember when I told you that you're not going to get 100% of everything? This over here, I can get a contractor and they can build this fence. This over here, we can do that. Now, if they're non-negotiable, like it has to be in a cul-de-sac, well, you shouldn't be showing them a house anyways if it's not in a cul-de-sac. But like there are certain extremes that you have. Does anybody got any questions for me or anything at all? Anybody?
I've got just a couple of points I want to make based on, I can put my video on from here now. Maybe if you can see it or not. I'll just take that. So a couple of points I want to make. One, I want to say that, and obviously, everything you say that we agree with. And one of the things though I see right now is that talking to buyers is that for me in getting pre-qualifying them is also talking to them with compassion, because there's a lot of things going on in their lives that are disrupting them from getting a home. And when you have a statistic of like 3.5 agents per buyer or seller, I think that, you know, it's having them understand that you're there that's going to try to do everything you possibly can, and having this kind of knowledge is extremely helpful. That's one thing. The other thing I want to say, as far as price points, or what you made the statement that, you know, well, this home may have 20 offers and, you know, why take them out and that sort of thing. The one issue that is important is knowing your buyer's purchasing position, because if you know they only have limited amount of money that Brock was already talking about, as far as, you know, how much due diligence are you going to need and where are you capped on your lending side, because if they're capped at maybe 200, 215, why would you take them out of the home that's going to be at 215? There's no way they're going to be able to negotiate and win their offer. So knowing what they can actually go after in this market is important. Otherwise, you know, you're going to waste their time. You know, I know you want to do a parameter, but really knowing what their bottom line is and what they can afford is truly important, because you may try to throw something out there to try to get the offer one, and they financially can't do it.
Yeah.
That's the last point I want to make is in regard to your statement about the expireds and withdrawals. And so that people who've never done this before, if you do this through the MLS does not distinguish whether or not that expired had become a sold property. So especially if you're going back a year or two, it's just going to, if the same home has been withdrawn and then it's sold, you're just going to get it as a withdrawal. So just make sure that if you're going to do circle prospecting or call on properties that are at least a year or more, just got to make sure they just haven't recently sold, because I find that it can happen a lot. And those are my points. So
Thank you, sir. One of the good things too, I would also say, not good things, but one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is people within the last 2 years. Does anybody know why 2 years? I'll tell you the answer because we're running out of time. Capital gains tax. So that's why people mostly wait 2 years. Well, I'm seeing a lot of people in the 2 or 3 year mark who want to be the wannabe investors, and they're actually doing a very good job because they are selling their house in 2 years, and they're making good money on their home right now. They're like, wow, I cannot believe we're doing one right now. We're selling the house $125,000 more than what they bought it 2 years ago. So don't be afraid to reach out. If you see these circle prospecting, that the 2 years people are selling again because they want to take advantage of the market. They're really, like, I'm seeing crazy stuff out there. So even if you go back, like Greg said, if you go back 8 or 10 years, like even if they sold and did it cycle again, those new buyers might sell again because the market is so crazy. All right. So keep that in mind. We're doing a lot of RPR stuff right now, a lot of residential property reports. It's in your MLS. It's free. We're giving those out. And we also learned that the mini reports, when you download them, they are text friendly. You can copy paste them and put them into text messages. So we've been doing a lot of that stuff. So does anybody else got any questions for me before I sign off? All right. Well, I hope you guys were able to get some information from this. It was beneficial for you. I appreciate those first time being on here. I appreciate the team, as always, being on here for our coaching points. And you guys have an awesome, awesome day. And I will see you guys hopefully here next week. All right, guys, have a great one, and appreciate you being on. Talk soon. It's on Facebook too if you want to the recording. So, all right, guys, thanks so much. Have a good one. See ya.